Share via email. Report story. By Baku Fan 15. Summary. Izuku is a teenage boy attending the UA Heroics program, training to become a hero. Ochako is a girl living in the countryside with dreams of becoming a hero, yet her family is too poor to move out of the tiny town of Itamori. Life is normal for the two of them until the day they start swapping bodies. Kimi no Na wa O, an Izuocha adaptation of this masterpiece of a movie into the world of My Hero Academia. Author's note. I changed Izuku's crush from Suyu to Melissa Shield because it feels so weird to have a crush of a frog or frog girl. Izuku thinks of Suyu as a classmate friend and nothing else. The most relevant is Melissa because she is Am's favorite niece. If you want to know more about Melissa Shield, you can see her in MHA Movie 1, Two Heroes. Equals 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 dot. Chapter 1. Sometimes, in the morning when I wake up, I find myself crying. I don't know why it happens or what's wrong, but the feeling that I've lost something very important lingers for a long time after I rise. I've always felt as if I were looking for something. It could be a thing, a feeling, maybe even a person. In the end, it doesn't really matter what it is, just that something is missing. Like a piece of me is that was once there disappeared one day. Ever since that day, I've been searching. Searching for the thing that I lost. The person that I lost. Izuku woke up as if it were any other day. He turned over on his side, leaning away from the light shining into his eyes. He smothered his face into his pillow, trying to force himself back into slumber. No, I should get up. I'll be late for school, he thought. Reluctantly, he pushed himself off his bed into a sitting position. Except, something felt different under him. His bed felt much more solid than before. Rubbing his eyes clear, he noticed something else was very off. He was wearing a bright pink sleeping gown, polka-dotted with even brighter pink spots. There was something else as well. The way his chest rounded out was not normal. Are these? Izuku put his hands up to his own chest and pushed them against the mound's present lightly. They squished softly in his hands, just like real ones should. Only then did he notice everything that was off about the room around him. There was light brown hair that dropped in front of his vision slightly. He was wearing a pink night dress, and the room around him was significantly more feminine. There were hair products and flowers laid out around. He wasn't in his room at UA, that was for certain. Ah, he said, shock all hitting him at once. He jumped to his feet, panicking. That shriek was strikingly feminine. Are you all right, honey? A man's voice Izuku didn't recognize called from somewhere else in the building he was in. This must be a dream. I've turned into a girl. Izuku thought, panicked. Everything's all right, he yelled back. The voice that came out of his mouth was not his voice. Trying to keep as level of a head as possible, he ran up to the mirror in the room and gazed into it to confirm his suspicion. True enough, the face looking back at him was not his. It was too circular, and pink blush was present on the cheeks. His had short brown hair similar to a bowl cut from the top of his head, and it was brown, not green. Lastly, he dropped the road. Promoted stories. You'll also like Zero Deku Onishots 31.1k 790 because of circumstances, this book won't be continued unfortunately. Feel free to check out my other stuff. Thank you for understanding. Izuku's Harem Academia 182k 1.7 Qst. Read. I am. Sequel of UR check mark 69.4K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of You Are So Better. Read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Her prince from the underworld, half demon is. 0.25.4K 450. It's basically the same story as my Succubus Momo X Deku story. I know. Real original, but hey, now you guys get a Deku from the other side of the tracks. Much needed love. Yandere Succubus Momo X Izu. 49.6K 759. After Wattpad had decided to delete this story out of nowhere, I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. Hurt cuz I love you to death. Izuocha. Ha. 0.8.6K 141. Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer as Return of Mokuden discontinued. 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Sure enough, as if to seal the deal, two circular breasts were there to finalize the suspicion. Izuku's face turned redder than a tomato. Ochako woke up as if it were any other, normal day. She got up off the makeshift mattress on the ground, and got dressed in her school uniform. Ignoring her bed head, she went downstairs to get some breakfast. Good morning, she said cheerfully, making her way to the rice cooker. She opened it up, getting blasted with a warm wave of steam. She inhaled as deeply as possible through her nose, taking in the great scent of fresh rice. She quickly spooned herself out a large bowl. She went to sit down, but as she looked up she saw the weird look her father was giving her. Is this too much? She asked, taking her spot on the opposite side as him. It was a minimalistic table, just stumpy wooden legs and a flat top. Then again, it was just the two of them, so there wasn't much need for more seats. Nobody ever visited anyways. No, it's just your acting, normal today. He noted, taking a sip of his coffee. What do you mean? She tilted her head. When you came downstairs yesterday, it was like a demon had possessed you. You were nuts. What on earth? Ochako thought. I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Ochako said, going back to her rice. Her dad just sighed and went back to eating his breakfast as well. They ate in silence for a few more moments. Don't you have to be getting to school? Her dad eventually piped up. What tia? Ochako wailed, finally noticing how late she had woken up. I have to be there in 5 minutes. It's all the way across the lake. Ochako shoved the last of her rice in her mouth frantically, putting on her socks and shoes, as well as her school uniform. Have a nice day, honey. Her dad bid her farewell as she shot out the door. She turned around the corner before something caught her eye. The old scooter bike they kept from when they moved here. It hasn't had gas for years. Ochako realized, defeated. Another long walk it as Ochako found herself nearly dozing of in class. It was really turning out to be a bad day. First, she wakes up late and shows up to school late, and now the teacher was going over some absurdly boring topic. Something something twilight, blah blah blah. Ochako mumbled, resting her head on the desk in front of her. She flipped through the notebook, taking notice of the doodles on the inside. Some depicted just random spur of the moment ideas, such as flowers or a tree, while others had more importance. One that specifically caught her eye was the one she'd just made last week. It depicted herself, wearing a bright pink and black hero costume. She was lifting massive chunks of concrete off of earthquake villains. At the top of the little drawing was the bolded text, Gravity. Ochako sighed. A dream best forgotten, she thought. She had always wanted to be a hero, ever since she was young. Not only did she want to help people, but she also knew heroes made good money. Being a hero would have landed her enough money to help out her parents, whose construction company was failing. But 3 years ago things took a turn for the worst. When they had gotten a construction contract way back then, everyone was excited. It was a small job in a remote town called Itamori, and would require them to live in the area for a few months, but that wasn't a problem considering that it would save them, for a few more months anyways. Everything went downhill when Ochako's mother fell ill. Apparently it was an extremely rare virus that many of the locals had an immunity to from years living in the area. She caught the disease and it was like a storm went through her. She didn't last 2 weeks. The medical bills had crippled Ochako's father, not to mention his mental state. He fell into a deep depression for a couple years and practically ignored his business. The company went bankrupt and the two of them were forced to take up permanent residence in Itamori. Ochako was understanding. Circumstances change, and she had been heartbroken at the loss of her mother as well. Understanding and accepting were two completely different things. Her entire shot at becoming a hero, the one thing she dreamed of, went out the window the day her mother died. The only high school in Itamori didn't have a heroics program. Odds are she would be stuck in this little village for the rest of her life. Ochako absent-mindedly turned the page again, wishing to take her thoughts off of those memories. What she expected to be a blank page was pointedly not blank. Who are you? It read. The school bell tore Ochako from her thoughts. You're acting surprisingly normal today, Uraraka. Hiroshima Ejiro said once lunch hour started. Normal. You're the second one to say that to me today. Ochako muttered, putting a piece of her sandwich in her mouth. Yeah, he's right. You forgot where your classes and locker were. You had really bad bedhead and no ribbon in your hair. It was like you had amnesia. Mina added, smug look on her pink face. I don't remember any of this. Ochako responded. You kept saying, this must be a dream, under your breath, too, Hiroshima finished. You seriously don't remember? Ochako shook her head. No, though there was something odd today in class. Did either of you write this in my notebook? She pulled the notebook out of her bag and showed them the page marked with the, who are you, text. Nope. New, weird. Ochako breathed. I just wish I could get out of this town. She mumbled. Ochako walked by the shrine on the way home. It was dark already, so the lights from the special ceremony could be seen from anywhere in the tiny town. She was walking by with Mina and Kirishima when she overheard a conversation. They say that this tradition is held every few years to appease those ancient gods that the people of this town used to believe in. One of the villagers mentioned. Why keep doing it then? For tradition's sake. Tradition is all we have these days. You've got that right. Ochako continued walking home. About an hour later, she sat on the small stone balcony that their little house had to overlook the rest of the village. It's all wrapped up around the lake, like a scene from a movie. It would be beautiful, if I weren't stuck here. Ochako sighed and picked up the mug next to her. She tossed it into the air, activating her quirk on it. The ceramic just floated into the sky, defying all gravity. I wish I could just fly away like that. Ochako mumbled, releasing her quirk. Gravity retook hold on the mug, causing it to plummet back to Earth, right back into Ochako's hands. She did this a few more times. Why couldn't I just have been born as a handsome Tokyo boy? She yelled into the void, falling onto her back. It's probably time for bed anyways. Ochako woke up to the sound of a phone alarm going off. Now that's odd. Usually, I don't set an alarm. Ochako thought. She reached out her hand towards the source of the noise, only to be met by open space. The fumbled her arm around a little more, but something suddenly shifted below her. Ah, she called out as she fell off her bed. Wait, bed. Ochako sat up and looked around. Not only was there a full-sized bed, not a little mattress on the ground, she was in a large room stocked full of All Might merchandise. Like, every single decoratable square foot of the room was covered with something related to All Might. This isn't my room, Ochako thought as she stood up, her bedsheet falling off her body. She felt taller than normal. She walked around, exploring the room. Except, when she took a first step, she noticed something very off. There's something there, Ochako realized. She looked down at her body, only to realize that it wasn't her body. Her arms were littered with deforming scars, and she could barely feel her right arm. Like, it was almost totally numb. Then, there was the fact that her precious hair was gone, replaced by an unruly, green bush on top of her head. Her legs were hairy and there was something between her legs. She peeled back the waistband, daring a small look to confirm her suspicion. She looked down and, yep, that was a thing. Okay. Recovering from how red her face was, she decided to try to figure out what was going on. Obviously, this was a dream. She hadn't just randomly become a completely different person overnight. I am here. All Might's voice echoed throughout the room, scaring Ochako. She went over and picked up the phone, looking at the message. From Iida Tenya, hurry, Midoriya. You may be late if you do not pick up the pace. Ochako read out loud. Late. Ochako panicked. Even though it was a dream, for some reason it felt extraordinarily real. Frantically she got dressed into what looked like the school uniform, ignoring how embarrassed by the look of her own, yet not her own body. She blasted open the door of the room she was in, expecting to be met with a house. Instead, she was met with a giant open area, with railings overlooking a staircase. The walls were lined with doors. Dorm rooms. Hey Midoriya. Just Joaquin. Up. Must be a rough day for ya, buddy. Come on with us, before you're late. A boy with spiky yellow and black hair called, waving Ochako on. May as well go along with the dream, she thought, jogging over. She felt extraordinarily energetic, like there was an extra boost of strength there that she wasn't used to. Walking with the yellow-haired boy was a girl, who had short violet hair and red marks under her eyes. Extending from under her ears were what looked like earphone jacks. You're usually as early as Iida, Midoriya. What? Did you sleep your alarm? The yellow-haired boy said. Something like that, Ochako muttered. At least he shows up on time, unlike you, Kaminari. The purple-haired girl said. So his name is Kaminari. Yeah, Kaminari bristled off. They walked down the stairs and made it out of the dorm building. Ochako just generally followed the flow of where Kaminari and the purple-haired girl went. Eventually, the sight of a large glass building came into sight. It was like a square with four large pillars and bridges connecting them. Yue, Ochako thought. You'd have to be living under a rock to not know what Yue was. Ochako was expecting to walk past the gates. Yet, when Kaminari and the girl walked through the metal arch, no problem, Ochako's excitement couldn't be contained. I'm going to Yue, she yelled out. stepping past the arch as well. Kaminari looked back and gave him a weird look. You've been going to UA for 2 years, he said, giving Ochako a weird look. Ochako stuttered. Why did this seem so real? Was she really going to a hero school in her dream? I'm just a little excited, that's all. Well, we do have combat training today. You're always good at that, the purple-haired girl said. That's what it is, Ochako said, trying to change the subject. Ochako followed the two all the way through the maze of hallways until they got to their homeroom. There were 16 total students, excluding Ochako herself. What's in store? Ochako thought, taking the empty seat she hoped was hers. Wait, if this is a hero school, then that means I have a really strong quirk. What's my quirk? She tried touching the desk with all 5 fingers, but nothing happened. I don't have me quirk, so it seems. Hey, Midoriya, you're late. A boy with short blue hair ran up to Ochako, waving his arms frantically. Ochako sat up a little straighter and scratched the back of her head. Sorry, I just found it a little hard to get out of bed this morning. That is no way a future hero should be acting. As class representative, I must ensure that everyone is doing what they need to, he said. Ochako was a little taken aback by his sudden aggressiveness. Lay off, Iida. It looks like he's having a bad day. Kaminari called over. Plus he would have been here sooner if I didn't insist he walk with us. If I had known where to go. Ochako thought. Suddenly, the blue-haired boy, Iida, bowed to Ochako. My apologies, Midoriya. I just want to ensure that you're doing what you need to in the future, Iida said. Ochako was taken aback by the sudden change in demeanor, so she took an extra moment to react. Oh, yeah, it's fine, she finally said. Iida nodded again and returned to his seat. Ochako just sat in her seat for an extra few minutes, not joining in on any conversations, since odds are she would have no idea how to act. Such a weird dream, Ochako muttered under her breath. Ochako was torn from her thoughts by someone sitting on his desk. Oh, here we go. Ochako looked up, and sitting on her desk was a girl. She had long dark green hair, not totally unlike the hair currently on Ochako's hair, though it was a bit darker of a shade. It was tied in a ribbon behind her back, and she wore the normal girl's uniform. Her face was a bit flat, but not plain. Her eyes were large and circular, and the pupils kind of reminded her of a frog's. Her legs were, significantly, more muscular than the rest of her body. You're acting odd this morning, Midoriya, she said, straight to the point. I'm just feeling a little bit weird, Ochako responded. The girl eyed Ochako. You're late. Not talking with anyone. You don't have your notebook out, and you haven't once mentioned the combat exercise we have today, Hiro. Ochako stopped for a moment. Hiro. She's acting even more and more like a frog. I'm just a bit tired, I guess. Ochako made the same excuse. The girl just raised an eyebrow, obviously not buying it. She was about to open her mouth to talk again when the door to the classroom opened. I'm here. In your seats, a man grumbled. Everyone in the class immediately obeyed, scrambling to their seats in mere moments. As you all know, we have combat training today. Get changed and meet All Might at Test City A. His voice was very monotone and emotionless. All Might. Since when is All Might a teacher at UA? The class didn't waste any time in hopping from their seats. Panels opened on the wall, revealing 17 briefcases, each labeled with a number. Ochako grabbed the one that corresponded with the seat she was in and followed the flow of where everyone was going. Ochako had nearly walked into the wrong changing room. He was glad that the girl from earlier stopped him. You're really out of it today. Go to the right changing room, she said. Oh, right, she said, walking into the other locker room and proceeded to get changed, which was really embarrassing. Ochako was pretty sure her face was hot pink, but she was facing the wall so that nobody saw her. It took a little while to piece together the costume, but Ochako thought she got it right. A dark green and black athletic suit with long gloves that went up to the biceps, which she was surprised at how big those muscles were. She also had iron-soled boots and specially made gloves that looked like they were made for slotting something, or maybe concentrating a blast. Lastly, there was a metal mouthguard and a green mask with green bunny ears popping up. Ochako initially had the hood up, but after seeing herself in the reflection of the tile, she saw how utterly ridiculous she looked and decided to put down the hood and let the metal mouthguard hang around her neck. After taking forever to change, Ochako hurried out after everyone else, catching up with the group. Ochako chose to not take part in the small talk made on the way to the combat training venue for fear of saying something completely wrong and making a fool of herself. She did, however, notice one more person that was not taking part in the group discussion. While Ochako was at the back of the group, trailing behind, there was another boy ahead of the group, taking his own pace. He had explosive blonde hair, and large grenade-looking gloves were on his arms. They eventually made it to the place Ochako assumed was Test City A. All she could see was a giant concrete wall, and the tips of skyscrapers sticking out over the top of it. How did they have enough money to make an entire city for combat drills? Ochako couldn't even fathom how much money that would be certainly enough to get out of stupid Itamori. They all walked through a dark tunnel to enter the city. Ochako couldn't see the people next to her, but she could see the blinding light ahead. They continued on, stepping into the light. Ochako was met with a perfect recreation of an urban city area. She had obviously been in a city before, but it had been years. Whilst living in Itamori, Ochako longed for the city. Being back in one, even if it was fake, was like a dream. Except for that she was already dreaming. So a dream inside of a dream. Standing in front of the group, about 10 feet away in a yellow and black striped suit was a man. He was tall, though extremely skinny. His face was angular, almost as if it were made of straight lines. He looked like a walking skeleton. He had a head of straight blonde hair that stuck up at weird angles, seemingly defying the laws of physics. Good morning, All Might. Hey, All Might. A few people greeted the man. Wait. All Might, where is he? Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well. The skeletal man responded, except it was in All Might's voice. It can't, that isn't All Might, is it? Ochako started to freak out a little. The people were referring to this man as All Might, though he looked nothing of the sort, save for similar hair. Not only that, but he was responding to the name as well. Is that really All Might? Today, I have prepared an exercise for you very similar to the first one you all did on the first week of your first year. We will be doing a hostage rescue scenario. A holographic image popped up behind the skeletal man, All Might. It depicted two video game-like figures outside of a building. The villain team will have two hostages somewhere inside the building. I'm cold. The hologram animated, shifting to a view of the villain team. They were inside a room, looking menacing while two people were tied up with rope on the floor. The rules are simple. If the villain team is incapacitated or captured with the capture tape, or if the hostages are safely recovered, then the hero team wins. If the hero team is incapacitated or captured, or if the hostages are severely injured, then the villain team wins. The hologram did a little animation for each battle scenario, depending on what team won. It was kinda cute, to be Hanset. I'll split up the teams now, remember to go beyond. Plus Ultra. At the moment that the man said the last two words of Yue's motto, he changed. He grew bigger and his muscles expanded. Standing in front of Ochako for a moment was the man himself, All Might. Then, he was gone with a puff of smoke, replaced by the same skeletal man, who was coughing. Ochako's breath stopped. It's really All Might. What happened to him? Is he always like this when he's not working? Ochako let out a squeak. It was high-pitched and full of surprise. All the heads around her turned to the source of the noise. Ochako's hand flew up to her mouth, covering it with her hand. Only then did she realize that Squeak was very, not manly. And she looked like a boy. Ochako flushed crimson. Midoriya, my boy, are you okay? All Might asked. Ochako suppressed a second squeak. Yeah, sorry, you're just a little skinnier than I remember. Her voice was much higher than she intended. I was trying to put on weight. She heard All Might mumble. The entire class burst into laughter, drawing the attention away from Ochako, much to her relief. All Might drew the teams at random, and Ochako was sort of relieved to be placed with the girl who sat on his desk earlier, who she learned was named Sue. They were set to be the hero team, going in to capture a set of dummies that were the hostages. We're up against Todoroki and Yaoyorozu, hero. Sue commented, drawing Ochako from her nervousness. Sue seemed to notice, though. You look nervous. You never look nervous for combat training. Sue was right. She was nervous. Not only was it combat training, but she had no idea what her quirk even was. She thought she felt some reserve of power in the back of her mind, but that could be almost anything. Then again, it was a dream. Maybe her quirk would be whatever she wanted it to be. Yeah, I don't know why. Ochako drifted off as she saw the sign above the door. It was a simple name for some fake business, but the first kanji caught her eye. It happened to be the same kanji that starts off the phrase, "Who are you?" Ochako's mind raced back to the note in her notebook. Couldn't hurt, right? I might end up waking up unexpectedly. Ochako looked around, and saw what she was looking for. The building they were in front of had a little jar full of pens. Carefully on the palm of her hand, she wrote down, Ochako. Are you drawing up the plan? Sue asked, trying to peer over Ochako's hand. She quickly closed it, concealing the name. Thinking quickly, Ochako wheeled around and shook her head. I had an idea, but it won't work based on the height of the building. Ochako said, hoping it sounded genuine. Did you want to go in through the roof? I could climb up, but I don't know if you could jump that high, hero. Sue commented, so some kind of augmentation quirk. Ochako thought. It made sense. Start. All Might's voice boomed over the intercom. Ochako and Sue nodded to each other, walking in the front door. They crept around the hallways, scouting for any sign of the hostages. How about you run ahead and scout the next floor quickly? I'll check this one. Let each other know if we see something. Sue said. Ochako nodded. She said quickly, maybe that means use my quirk. Ochako still sensed the well of power in the back of her mind. Here goes nothing. Ochako mentally reached out and grabbed the power. She felt raw, unfiltered strength flow through her limbs. Looking down, she saw red, vein-like power running up and down her arms. Tentatively, Ochako moved her arm. She was not expecting it to move so drastically. Instead of moving forwards a few inches like she intended, her arm flew in front of her in a punching motion. Wind whipped up, blasting from the area around Ochako. A massive shockwave broke out in front of her, tearing the walls of the building itself apart. The columns supporting the building cracked before being blown apart themselves by the force of the blast. The wind died down, only to be replaced by rumbling. Ochako's right arm fell limply to her side, unmoving and bruised purple. Ochako looked up to see the roof getting closer and closer. Oops, Ochako muttered, bracing herself for the impact as the entire building collapsed on top of her. Chapter 2. Izuku woke up and immediately noticed something different. First off, he wasn't in his room. Usually when he woke up, he saw a picture of All Might staring down at him from the ceiling. Instead, all he saw was a painted white plaster ceiling, no All Might to be seen. Secondly, he wasn't in his nice and comfy pajamas he normally wore to bed. Looking down, he saw that he was in a tattered form of his hero costume, and his entire right arm was covered in bandages. In the process of looking at his arm, he also noticed that he was in the nurse's office for some reason. Lastly, he was sore. Like, more sore than he had been in a very long time. His entire right arm was throbbing with a dull pain, though it was kind of refreshing to actually be able to feel it, as it was usually in a constant state of numb from his early days of overdoing his quirk. The pain in his arm was familiar, but not welcome either. It was the same pain he felt when he broke his limbs with his quirk. What happened? He groaned, trying to sit up in the hospital bed. Oh dear, you're up already. Recovery Girl's voice called, and a moment later she appeared from behind the curtain, greeting Izuku with a smile on her face. Izuku rubbed his eyes with his fists. You really tore yourself up out there. It's been a while since you blew up your arm. Recovery Girl said. Blew up my arm. What? Izuku tilted his head, completely confused. Do you not remember? A concussion perhaps? Recovery Girl hobbled over, getting out a flashlight. She ran Izuku through a quick concussion test before shaking her head. No concussion. Wait, can you tell me what is going on? Izuku put out his hand, stopping conversation. I can explain, I hope. All Might popped out from behind the curtain, coming in at the same angle that Recovery Girl had. Izuku looked up at his mentor, waiting on an explanation. During the battle trail, you started acting odd. You looked like you had no idea what you were doing, and your movements were sloppy. Then, for some reason, you used a full-powered attack with One for All, taking out the entire building at once. We're lucky that you were the only one injured. All Might explained. I don't, and that brings me to my point. All Might cut Izuku off and took a deep breath. Don't you know not to use full-powered attacks anymore? Don't you remember what the doctor said about what could happen if you overuse your quirk too many times? Don't you have any sense of self-preservation? All Might boomed. He was in his powered-down form, just as he had been for the last year or so since the battle with All for One. Even in that form, his voice was commanding and booming. Izuku didn't even know what he had done, yet he still felt ashamed, shying away from the older man in his bed. I'm sorry, but I actually have no idea what you're talking about. Izuku looked up into his mentor's eyes. The man stared back, tilting his head. You don't remember any of that. Izuku shook his head. The last thing I remember is going to bed last night. All Might brought his hand to his chin, thinking. He turned to Recovery Grill. Could it be some other kind of memory loss aside from a concussion? It's always possible, though it's very unlikely. All Might just shook his head, just as confused as Izuku now. I suppose you can head back to the dorms now. Just let us know if any of it comes back. All Might said. Izuku nodded in confirmation, pushing himself off the bed with one arm, the other still cradled and covered in bandages. Izuku opened the door to the 1A dorm building, and within seconds he was surrounded by at least 3 people. Dude, are you okay? That's the first time in a while that you've blown yourself up like that. You didn't even give up a good fight, you damned nerd. Izuku took a step back, putting his hands up defensively. I don't really remember any of that, sorry, he said nervously, scratching his neck anxiously. Like memory loss? Kaminari asked. Izuku nodded. I don't remember anything between going to bed last night and waking up in the recovery room. Kaminari and Zero ilted their heads, thinking. This whole situation is odd, man, I'm telling you. First you were acting all weird this morning, then you take out the entire building with one blast from your quirk, and now you don't remember any of it. Kaminari muttered. I was acting odd this morning. Yeah, Jiro responded this time. You were up late. You were super surprised for some reason that you were going to UA. You freaked out when you saw All Might for some reason, and you spoke with a backcountry accent. What? Izuku jumped back, surprised. Yeah, man, I swear it was like you weren't yourself. Zero added on. Izuku looked between the 3 of them, genuinely concerned. This is so weird. I think I'm going to go back to my room and get some rest. Izuku said, rubbing at his temples. This whole situation was making his head hurt. Yeah, you look like you need it, Kaminari said, leaving him with the rest of the 3. Bakugo had been standing off to the side, glaring at Izuku for the entirety of the conversation. Izuku was happy that he didn't follow. Izuku got back to his room and crashed onto his bed. He had only been awake for about half an hour, at least of what he could remember, but he already felt dead tired, though some of that exhaustion could be attributed to Recovery Girl's quick working its magic. Izuku changed into his pajamas lazily, throwing his hero suit into a lump on the ground. He could fold it later. He jumped back onto his bed once again and reached for his phone on the bedside table. He brought it in front of his face, but he noticed something odd. In the crook of his left hand, he saw some black marks opening his hand. Izuku recognized it as a few simple kanji. It read, Ochako. Izuku's mind immediately raced back to the really weird dream he had the previous night. The one where he was in a girl's body in some small town around a lake in backcountry Japan. The one where he wrote the question, Who are you? In her notebook. The same dream where people had been referring to Izuku by that very same name. Now this is weird. Izuku thought, either he was sleepwalking in some way, or something supernatural was occurring. Izuku tried to refocus on his phone and ignore the oddities and attribute it to his memory loss from the morning, but every time he tried to fall asleep, his eyes were inexplicably drawn to the writing on his hand. It was a while before he was actually able to fall asleep. Izuku dreamed again of Ochako's life. He was once again in a small town in rural Japan, attending a tiny high school. He was once again a girl. Izuku looked around the room he had only dreamed of once before, but this time he looked at it with a new perspective. Last time, he had asked the dream, or was it a dream? Who Ochako was. It had responded, though he had no idea or memory of how. Maybe if he asked it more questions he would figure out just what in the world was going on. Izuku got up off the lousy mattress on the ground, taking the mittens off of his hands and setting them onto the table. He scrambled to find a pen or something else to write on his arm with. As he passed by the mirror he noticed something. Ochako was only wearing a see-through shirt and underwear. Izuku jumped away from the mirror, blushing harder than he ever had in his life. Looking down at his own body, he was very easily able to see Ochako's chest. If Izuku could eject those two mounds from his body, he would, so long as it meant his face would stop being so red. It felt like he was on fire. He tried to cover them up with his elbows so he couldn't see them, but that proved to be even worse, as that meant touching them. Izuku felt like he was about to faint. Then, he realized that he had to take the transparent shirt off in order to get dressed. He'd have to go through the day as normal once again, living in this foreign body. Preparing himself mentally, he took off the shirt, scrambling through the drawers for the school uniform he needed to wear. He felt his face get even hotter as he accidentally got views of his bare chest. He nearly passed out from embarrassment, but Izuku was able to power through and get the clothes on. He took a deep breath, preparing to get started with improvising again, but he noticed something. Ochaka, you're not wearing your lucky bracelet. The pink girl, Mina, had said last time Izuku was in this dream. Could she have meant this? Izuku grabbed a long ribbon that was sitting on the desk right next to the door. It was red at the ends, but it faded to orange, then yellow, then blue, and finally white as it neared the center. Shrugging, Izuku wrapped it around his wrist before opening the sliding door. I'll write my message at the end of the day when nobody will question it, he thought. Izuku barely made it through another day in the small town, living in someone else's body, in someone else's life. He certainly got a few odd looks and glances from various people, but he made it through slightly better than his first time. He crashed onto the mattress on the floor, falling into a heap. It was exhausting living a life he had no idea how to live, trying to figure things out along the way. Not to mention the fact that Ochako had a quirk that made life difficult for someone not accustomed to it. He had made at least 10 things float unintentionally throughout the day. Izuku closed his eyes, wishing for this dream to end so that he could go back to his own body. He felt himself drifting away then. Oh no, I almost forgot. Izuku groggily sat up, leaning for the pen he could see on the shelf not too far away. His fingers got close and then stopped. Of course his arms weren't long enough. Groaning, he got all the way back up, grabbed the pen, then plopped himself down on the mattress. He scribbled a few questions on Ochako's left arm, using up all the space he could, trying to reach for as much information as possible in one go. He was about to set down the pen and finally go to sleep, but thought of something last minute. Izuku Midoriya. He signed his name at the bottom for good measure. Finally, he laid down on the floor mattress, falling into the clutches of sleep. Ochako felt the light shine onto her eyelids. Light in her face only meant one thing. It was morning. Mornings meant she had to go face real life in this tiny miserable town. Why can't I just stay in that dream where I was going to UA? Ochako mentally complained. Ochako reached out to her side to push herself up into a sitting position. Except, when she put her hand down, it went straight through where the ground should be. Ah, she called out, her eyes snapping open. She was spinning around on open air, propelled by the force of her hand whipping through the air. Around her, at least 5 objects from around her room were floating in the air, including her floor mattress, blanket, and coffee mug. Release, she said, putting her hands together, touching all her fingers together. She fell to the ground with a painful thud, and she heard the mug shatter against the ground. Ochako sat up, rubbing her side. Ow, ow, ow. She forced herself to stand up, walking around the shards of ceramic and gathering the dustpan. She shoveled the shattered pieces of the mug into the dustpan, dumping it into the trash can. I like that mug, too, she mumbled. Looking around her room, Ochako noticed what had been wrong. Her mittens she normally wore to bed to keep herself from activating her quirk in her sleep were sitting on HRE desk still. I never forget my mittens anymore. Odd. Ochako thought to herself. She walked over and picked up her blanket and mattress, putting them back in the spots they belonged on the floor. She reached with her left hand to grab the other assorted items she had accidentally floated when she noticed something odd. Her entire left arm was marked with black lings. Flipping over her arm to look at her forearm, she noticed that the lines were kanji. Ochako, who are you? What is going on? Izuku Midoriya. Ochako dropped everything she was holding in shock, scrambling back as if she could get away from her own arm. She knew that name it was signed with. It was the boy she had been in her dream, the one who went to UA. This is freaky, Ochako thought, staring at the words. Ochako went through her day after her, eventful. Waking. It was enlightening, to say the least. She was told of another giant list of things that she had done the previous day, none of which she had recollection of. They consisted of things like activating her quirk and a ton of random objects, including her school desk, coming to school without her hair done, and most surprising of all, completely and utterly dominating in gym. Basically, it was a giant list of things she would not normally do, not to mention the writing that had been on her arm this morning. That entire situation was a mystery. Had she written on her arm while sleepwalking or something? That seemed like the only logical explanation. She got back home and watched TV for a few hours until her father got home and made dinner. Her dad, being the spoilsport that he was, turned off her show in favor of the stupid news. Did you see that comet that was supposed to be coming next month, Ochako? He said between bites of food. She hummed, looking up from her noodle bowl. She quickly slurped up her remaining noodles. Comet, she asked. Her dad just pointed to the TV. Ochako looked over and saw that it was a news report on just that same topic. Next month, there will be a very special event that happens once every 1,000 years. A comet will be making a close approach to Earth, so close in fact, that it is just outside the point at which it would start to come apart due to Earth's gravitational pull. It will be visible to the naked eye. There was a map in the background, showing the trajectory of the comet in relation to Earth. That's cool, Ochako shrugged, turning back to her food. The town is holding a festival to view it. He prodded. Ochako just kept eating her food. You should go. Ochako leaned back, groaning. Do I have to? She complained. To her dismay, her father nodded. Honey, I know that you don't like being here. I know how you dream of the big city, but you're just making your life miserable. You need to go out and get to know the town more. Maybe I'll like it more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ochako finished. I'll go, it means that much. She got up from her seat with her food, walking it over to the sink, putting her empty bowl down and washing it out. Without another word, she left to go up the stairs. She came into her room, throwing herself onto the measly little mattress on the floor, groaning into her pillow. Why can't I just be a hero? She said into the pillow. Then I could finally get out of this place. I could take Kirishima and Mina with me, too. Ochako eventually got tired of wanting what could never be, opting for the better option. Being the boy in her dreams, the one that had gone to UA. Maybe that way she could figure out exactly what had been going on, and why there was writing on her arm, seemingly from the boy she was in her dreams. It wasn't long before sleep overtook her. Izuku woke up, and for the first time in 3 days, was met with the poster of All Might's smiling face. At least that's normal, he thought. There weren't any shenanigans going on with being in the hospital room again, and he wasn't dreaming up being in that small town again, living another life. Breathing a sigh of relief, he sat up, preparing himself. Looking down, he saw just what he was hoping to see. Writing on his arm, Izuku, the boy I am in my dreams. What is going on? Ochako Uraraka. Izuku blinked. He was not expecting that. Not only was it a coherent sentence instead of some stray word Izuku could have written on himself in his sleep, but it was also a direct response to the question Izuku had written on Ochako's arm in his dream. What? Izuku breathed, taking in all the information. So it's real. It's not some figment of my imagination. What the actual? Izuku trailed off, hearing his phone buzz. His head snapped to his bedside table, only to see that it was a post from the 1A group chat. He was about to sleep his phone to go back to figuring out what the hell was going on, but something caught his eye. The date, September 13th. It should be the 12th. Izuku exclaimed, staring at his phone screen. His eyes snapped to the writing on his arm, then back to his phone, then back to his arm, an idea forming in his head. He needed to test his theory. Scrambling around his room, he found a marker. He pulled up his sleeve, writing a small note on his shoulder, hopefully where someone wouldn't be able to see it, but it would be obvious if his shirt was off. Check phone log. Password is 5287. Izuku capped the marker. Step 1 of his plan complete. Picking up his phone, he opened the diary app his mom had insisted he install, though he had never once opened it until now. Guess it's coming in handy after all, Izuku thought, starting to type out the details to his plan to test his theory. Ochako woke up to be met with a poster of All Might's smiling face. She was confused at first before realizing that she was once again in her dreamscape. Just to be sure, she turned her head, getting a look at her pillow, and sure enough, just at the sides of her vision was a fluffy green bush of hair on her head. This was the third time she had woken up in this perfect reality. The first time she had gone out and blown up a building with her crazy powerful quirk, and the second time had just been a regular old school day. The regular school day had almost been more traumatic than destroying a building, as it had been a nightmare trying to figure out how to live a life she had no idea how to live. She had to awkwardly follow people to class, and the coursework barely made sense to her. Groaning, Ochako sat up on the mattress. The bed she was in was at least 10 times more comfy than her mattress on the floor back home, and she wished that she could just lay back down and sleep on it for longer, but she knew that she should probably go to school. Ochako rubbed her eyes, putting her feet off the side of the bed. She opened her eyes reluctantly, getting ready to start the new day, and was met with a completely shirtless body. Ah! Ochako jumped up in surprise, face going hotter than a flame. SS shirtless, she squeaked internally, trying not to look at her own shirtless body. The last 2 times she had woken up, there had been a shirt on her body. That obviously was not the case this time. Eventually, Ochako found the bravery to open her eyes again and look down. She felt her face flare up once again, but not as bad as last time. She'd seen this body shirtless before, but never had she gotten a good look. All the other times had been when changing from one outfit to another, be it night clothes or the hero outfit. Looking down at her Izuku's body now, she realized how toned it was. All of it was pure muscle, not a hint of loose fat in sight. Her abs were extremely well defined, as well as her biceps and chest. Reaching up, Ochako poked one of the abs, only to be met with rock-solid resistance. Eek! Ochako squealed, realizing what she was doing. She shot her arms out to the side, trying to get her hands as far away as possible from her body. In the process of trying to remove her own arms from her body, Ochako saw a flash of black on her left bicep. Huh, check phone log. Password is. She trailed off. She had ridden on this body's arms before, but she had assumed that she'd just been talking to the dream, and then subconsciously responding in her sleep. She did have a history with sleepwalking. After all, this, however, was the first time she'd actually seen a response inside the dream. Reaching over to the bedside table, she picked up the phone and typed in the password. Miraculously, the phone unlocked, revealing a home screen. She swiped through, looking for something that could be the phone log, but all she saw were standard apps such as email, phone, texting, and YouTube. Could this be it? She mumbled, clicking on an app named Diary. It opened up with colorful depictions of the dates, all of which she could swipe through. There was only one entry so far, so she clicked on it. It opened up to a massive paragraph that took up the entire screen and then some. Hello, Ochako, if you are reading this. Freaky. Ochako breathed. She continued. If you are reading this, know this is a message from Izuku Midoriya, the person who you probably are right now. For the last few days, I've been having weird dreams. I'm a girl in a small town in backcountry Japan named Ochako Uraraka. I go to a high school in the only high school nearby, and two of my friends are Ajiro Kirishima and Mina Ashido. I live with my father and only my father. Whoa, this is getting scary. Ochako could feel her hands shaking slightly. The message continued. If any of this sounds familiar, especially if I was accurate with my descriptions of you, then I think something really weird is going on. I've noticed that the date I thought it should be was in fact not the date it was. It was like I magically lost a day to thin air, a day of which I have no memories. I don't have any proof of it, but I think that we may be switching bodies. The phone fell out of Ochako's hand, clattering onto the floor. That had been the end of the message anyways. Ochako scrambled to pick it up again, taking a more careful look at the date. It's the 14th. It should be the 13th. Why is it the 14th? What in the? Ochako tossed the phone back onto the bed, pacing back and forth in the room. Everything made sense. The lost dates, the hazy memories, the perfect description of her life from someone that should not know what her life is, how realistic the dreams were. Then why is it so hard to believe? It all makes so much more sense. Or it could be my mind playing a very elaborate trick on me. Ochako stopped. She walked back over to the bed and picked up the phone, typing out a message. It all makes sense, what you said, but I still think that there's a chance my mind could be playing a trick on me. People just don't switch bodies, right? Right. Izuku read out loud. He was having the same thoughts. He continued reading aloud. I've devised a test to be 100% certain that this is happening. Throughout the day today, I asked Kaminari, I think that's his name, to tell you the words, it's real. If this whole swapping bodies thing is true and it's not some figment of my imagination, then other people should be outside of the effect. Next time we swap, if that is what's happening, then tell Mina to say the same thing to me. That way we can confirm if this is really what's going on. That was the end of the message. Panicking, Izuku tossed his phone down on the bed. Grabbing a shirt and barreling out of his dorm room, he ran across the building, searching for the right room until he came across it. Izuku pounded on the door labeled, Denki Kaminari. He heard a groan from inside and someone moving around. Eventually, Izuku heard the lock click and the door opened to reveal an extremely looking Kaminari. His yellow hair was all over the place, like a bad impression of an afro. Midoriya, it's the weekend. Dude. Kaminari rubbed his eyes tiredly. What did I tell you to tell me yesterday? Huh. Kaminari shook his head, trying to rid the Gogonus. What, that? Is it really that important that you had to get me up so early? Yes. Now what was it? It was man, let me think. It was, oh yeah, it's real, whatever that means. He said finally. Izuku felt his heart drop like a rock. Now why? Thanks Kaminari. Izuku dashed away before the blonde could even say any more. It's real. All of it. It's all real. Izuku didn't know if he should be overjoyed that he had figured it all out or freaked out by the nature of the situation. Maybe it was both. That girl from my dreams. Where were? Swapping bodies. Where stories live. Discover now.